We barely made it out alive, hunted by a cult that had been eating humans for generations. Their chants still echo in my head, and sometimes at night I can smell the blood-soaked earth where they dragged their victims. Welcome to Bound in Fear, the place where true horror stories live. Every night, we bring you the most disturbing encounters, real incidents and chilling survivor confessions that most people are too afraid to tell. If you love the kind of stories that keep you awake, staring into the dark, then hit subscribe right now and join us daily, because the next story might be the one that haunts you forever. The River Maw. I grew up near the Appalachian Mountains, where the rivers cut deep into the rock and the woods stretch for miles without a single sign of human life. My father taught me to respect the forest, to never take more than you need, and to never, under any circumstances, camp along the old logging road that runs parallel to the Redfern River. He never explained why, just repeated it like a prayer every time I mentioned going that way. When I was 17, I thought he was just superstitious. By then my friends and I were restless, eager to prove ourselves tougher than the old folks who clung to their ghost stories. One summer night, drunk on cheap beer and teenage arrogance, we decided to hike out there, pitch our tents right by the river, and laugh at the warnings. We thought we were invincible. We thought the woods belonged to us. The first day was uneventful. We hiked, joked, set up camp. The Redfern flowed fast, its surface flashing silver in the fading light. But the deeper night crept, the more wrong everything felt. The woods around us went still. No frogs, no crickets, no rustling branches. Just the hiss of the river, constant, like it was whispering secrets too low for us to catch. Around midnight, we heard voices. At first we thought it was another group of campers, but the sound was off. Low muttering carrying no warmth. The words were broken, guttural, and though the language was strange, the rhythm had a cruel precision. My friend Kyle laughed it off, said it was locals messing with us. He even shouted back, some drunken joke that echoed too loud across the water. That's when we saw the fire. Across the river, deep in the trees, orange light flickered. Figures moved in front of it, tall and thin, their shadows stretching impossibly long. They swayed back and forth, hands rising in unison, heads tilting toward the sky. The chanting grew louder, weaving with the roar of the river until the two sounds were indistinguishable. "Let's check it out," Kyle whispered. The idiot was already untying the canoe we'd dragged along the bank. I tried to stop him, but the others egged him on, drunk and reckless. Against my better judgment, I climbed in too. I told myself it was to keep them safe, but maybe part of me was curious. The river fought us. Every stroke of the paddle felt heavier than the last, as if the current wanted to drag us back. But eventually we made it across, pulled the canoe up and crept toward the fire. What we found wasn't a campsite. It was an altar. A great flat stone sat at the center of a clearing, blackened with old stains. The fire burned in a ring around it, and the figures, there were at least 20, stood beyond, their faces hidden behind masks of bone and bark. The chanting stopped the moment we broke the tree line. Dozens of heads turned toward us in perfect silence. Kyle laughed, tried to wave, but his voice cracked in the stillness. That's when one of them stepped forward, the tallest of the group. His mask was different, carved into a grotesque grin, the jaws painted crimson. He held a staff crowned with what I swear was a human jawbone, its teeth still intact. He pointed it at us, and the others began to close in. We ran. The woods erupted with movement, feet pounding the earth behind us, voices shrieking now instead of chanting. We crashed through branches, stumbled over roots, half blind in the firelight. Somehow, by sheer luck, we made it back to the canoe and pushed off just as the first of them burst from the tree line. They didn't chase us into the water. They just stood there lining the bank, their bone masks glowing in the fire's reflection. And then, in eerie unison, They lifted their hands and began to hum. The sound vibrated through the air, through the water, through my chest until it felt like my heartbeat belonged to them. Halfway across, the canoe lurched. Something slammed against the bottom, hard enough to nearly tip us. Kyle swore, gripping the sides, and then something pale broke the surface. A hand. Human but bloated, its skin slick and white as riverstone. It clawed at the canoe before sinking back under. The river boiled with movement. Arms, faces, twisted bodies writhing just beneath the surface. Not alive, not exactly dead either. Their mouths opened and closed as if they were screaming, but no sound came out. The water swallowed it all. We paddled like mad, not caring where we landed. By some miracle, we made it back to our side, dragging the canoe up as the current tore at it. We collapsed on the bank, shaking, staring at the water that still churned with pale shapes beneath. That's when we noticed Kyle was gone. 1 second, he was beside us, gasping for breath. The next, nothing but ripples in the river. We called his name until our throats tore, but the forest gave no answer. Only that endless whispering hiss. We ran all night, never daring to look back, until we finally stumbled onto the old logging road at dawn. We didn't speak about it to anyone. When people asked where Kyle had gone, we lied, said he took off, got tired of us. His parents believed it, maybe because it was easier than the truth, but I can still hear him sometimes in my dreams. His voice calling from the water, muffled, distorted, begging me to come back. And when I drive near the Redfern, I can't look at the river without seeing faces breaking the surface, mouths gaping, eyes pleading. My father was right. Some places don't belong to us. They belong to whatever waits in the dark, patient and hungry. And the Redfern River, it takes who it wants and it never lets go. The Hollow Pines. I was never the type to believe in ghost stories, not the kind people whispered about when they were out on patrol at night, huddled around a fire, swapping tales to keep themselves awake. I figured most of it was just to spook the rookies, scare tactics wrapped in folklore. But there are some things that burn themselves into your memory so deep, you can't laugh them off anymore. This is one of those things. I'm telling it because it happened to me, and if I stay quiet, it'll feel like they won. Maybe they already did. It was late September when the first reports came in. Visitors claimed to see flickers of orange light far out in the forest at night. At first we thought it was campers ignoring fire regulations, maybe teenagers sneaking out to drink and cause trouble. But then one family said they'd seen figures moving in the tree line. Barefoot men and women who didn't speak, just stared. My partner Jordan and I were sent to check it out. We were rangers. It was our job to keep the park safe, even from the things nobody wanted to believe were out there. The forest where we worked was called Hollow Pines, though no one remembered why. Some said it was because the trees grew tall but empty, trunks eaten away by rot. Others said it was because the wind there sounded like voices calling from hollow throats. It stretched for miles, endless pines packed so tight the sky vanished when you stepped inside. Even in daylight it felt like dusk. We started our patrol near sundown. The air smelled faintly of smoke, but there was no fire ban lifted. No reason for anyone to be burning wood. Jordan clicked his flashlight on, even though the last traces of daylight still clung to the horizon. "You hear that?" he asked. At first I thought he meant the silence. Hollow Pines was never lively. It wasn't the kind of place where birds sang cheerfully from branches, but that night it felt wrong, too still, too empty. Then I caught it too, a rhythm faint, carried on the wind, not natural. Not the creak of trees or the scuttle of animals. It was chanting. We followed the sound deeper in. My radio crackled once, but no voice came through. Just static, faint as breathing. Jordan swore under his breath and adjusted the strap of his rifle. We weren't supposed to assume danger, but the look on his face told me he was already doing the math. 2 of us against whoever was out there. And if it wasn't just people? He didn't say it out loud, but I was thinking it too. After half an hour, the smoke grew stronger. Then we saw it, the flicker of fire through the branches. We killed our flashlights and crouched low. The trees opened into a clearing. In the center stood a ring of stones blackened by soot, flames dancing high. Around it, a group of figures swayed in unison, barefoot, clothes ragged, skins smeared with ash. There must have been 20, maybe more. I was about to step back when Jordan grabbed my arm and pointed. I followed his finger. At the edge of the fire, laid out on a flat slab of rock, was something pale. My stomach turned when I realized it was a body. Not a deer, not any kind of animal. Human, the chanting rose, voices thick, guttural, not any language I knew. The figures moved closer to the fire. One of them, taller than the rest, wore something around his head, an antlered crown dark with age. He lifted a blade carved from bone, its surface dull but unmistakably sharp. I think Jordan forgot how to breathe. I know I did. Every instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't move. My boots felt nailed to the earth. I watched as the bone blade came down, clean and sure. The body twitched once, then stilled. Jordan tugged at me. "We have to get out," he mouthed. His voice was almost soundless, but it felt too loud in that clearing. The chanting paused just for a breath. My heart stopped. Then it started again, louder, faster. We didn't wait. We backed into the trees as quietly as we could, moving slow, each step deliberate. But I swear the forest betrayed us. A branch snapped beneath my boot, sharp as a gunshot. The chanting cut off instantly. I turned and saw them. Eyes glinting in the firelight fixed on us. Dozens of them, heads tilted in eerie unison, like wolves catching a scent. The man with the antler crown raised his bone blade and pointed it toward the trees. "Toward us." "Run," Jordan hissed, and this time I didn't argue. We tore through the forest, branches whipping at our faces, roots clawing at our boots. I didn't look back, but I could hear them. Not running, not chasing, just moving. Feet slapping earth, dozens of them. And somehow they kept pace without effort. The chanting had turned to a low hum, vibrating through the ground, through my bones. Our flashlights bounced wildly, barely piercing the darkness. I tried my radio again, but it only screamed static at me. Jordan cursed and kept running. I don't know how long we ran, but the forest seemed endless, twisting, folding in on itself. Every landmark looked the same, every path repeated. Hollow Pines had never felt so alive, like it wanted us lost. Finally, we stumbled into a ravine. A sheer drop yawned before us, 30 feet down to rocks. We skidded to a halt, chest heaving, sweat stinging our eyes. Behind us, the forest went silent again. No footsteps. No chanting. Just silence so thick it pressed against my ears. "I don't like this," Jordan whispered. His voice shook. "They're hurting us." The words barely left his mouth before something whistled past my ear and thudded into a tree. I turned and saw it. A spear, crudely carved, half wrapped in sinew. Another one followed, then another. We scrambled along the ravine's edge, trying to find a way down, a way out. Then I saw it. Across the drop, half hidden by the trees, stood more of them. Their faces were painted white, eyes blackened with ash. Silent, watching, blocking the way forward. Jordan raised his rifle, finger trembling on the trigger. I grabbed his arm. "Don't, it'll just make it worse." But maybe it was already too late. A figure stepped forward from the group across the ravine. The antler-crowned man. Even from that distance I could see his grin, teeth stained dark. He lifted a hand and made a gesture. 2 fingers pressed to his lips, then spread wide. The others mimicked him, dozens of pale hands repeating the motion. Then they began to hum again. The sound made my vision blur. My knees weakened. I clutched my head, trying to block it out, but it sank past flesh and bone, straight into my mind. Jordan shouted something, but his voice was distant, muffled, drowned beneath that awful harmony. The world tilted. For a moment I swear I wasn't standing in hollow pines anymore. I was somewhere else. A cavern lit by fire, walls slick with fat. Shadows moved, twisted, hunched shapes tearing at meat with their teeth. The smell of copper and smoke was so strong I gagged. And beneath it all, the chanting, "Feed, feed, feed," then it was gone. I was back in the forest, gasping like I'd been underwater too long. Jordan grabbed me, shaking me. "We have to move." We stumbled along the ravine until we found a slope shallow enough to scramble down. Rocks tore at my hands, my knees, but pain was nothing compared to the thought of being caught. We reached the bottom and crashed through the undergrowth, aiming for the old service road that cut through the forest. If we could just make it there, maybe we'd have a chance, but the forest wasn't finished with us. The path twisted again, leading us deeper instead of out. The smoke grew thicker, choking, stinging our eyes. My lungs burned with each breath. Then the chanting rose again, closer this time, from ahead. From behind, from all around. Jordan stopped, spinning in circles, rifle raised. His eyes were wild, whites flashing in the beam of his flashlight. "They're everywhere," he said, voice cracking. "We're not getting out." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that we could still make it, but before I could speak, the trees ahead parted and figures stepped into the beam of light. 3, then 5, then more, spreading wide across the path. Their eyes caught the light like animals. Jordan fired. The shot echoed through the forest, deafening. One of the figures dropped, a dark shape crumpling to the ground. The others didn't flinch, didn't scream. They just kept coming. I grabbed Jordan's arm and yanked him sideways. We crashed through the trees again, desperate, frantic. My chest ached, every breath a knife. I could hear them following, not running, not rushing, just moving steady, certain, like they knew no matter how far we went, we'd end up where they wanted us. And maybe they were right. Because the next clearing we stumbled into was the same one we'd left. The fire still burned high. The stone slab still waited. And the body, no, not the same body, a different one now, smaller, fresher. The antlered man stood at the fire's edge, waiting. His grin stretched wide, splitting his face. And behind us I heard the footsteps closing in. The salted bones. I've kept this to myself for nearly 40 years, and part of me hoped I'd take it to my grave. People don't want to believe in monsters unless they're on a movie screen dressed up in makeup and special effects. They'd rather think you're crazy than admit the woods might hold things that don't belong in the daylight. But I can't carry it anymore. The smell of salt still clings to me when I dream, and when the wind blows the wrong way, I swear I hear them singing. It was 1984, the height of hunting season. I was in my 20s, full of myself, and convinced I could handle anything the wilderness threw my way. My family had been hunting for generations, and I'd spent more nights in the forest than most people spend in their own beds. That year I went farther out than usual, chasing rumors of a valley no one dared to map. Some said it was because the rock there was unstable. Others whispered about strange sounds echoing through the hills. I didn't care. The isolation meant fewer hunters, more game, or so I thought. The first sign that something was wrong came with the silence. Even in the deep woods there's always noise. Birds, insects, the wind through the leaves. But that valley was different. The closer I got, the quieter it became until even my own footsteps felt muffled, swallowed by the earth. I told myself it was just nerves, maybe the pressure of the hills doing something strange to the air. I should have listened to my instincts, turned back. Bird pride is a powerful drug. I made camp near a ridge overlooking the valley. That night, the wind shifted and I caught the smell, sharp, bitter, stinging the back of my throat. At first I thought it was gunpowder, maybe from another hunter, but it didn't fade. It clung heavy like salt brine poured over meat. I tossed and turned, half asleep, half alert, until I heard it. A low chant rising from below, a rhythm too steady to be the wind. I told myself it had to be hunters drunk around a fire, but when I peered over the ridge, I saw no flames, only darkness thick as tar. Still, the chanting grew louder, bouncing off the rock walls, folding in on itself until it sounded like the valley was breathing. I wanted to pack up right then and there, but something held me. Curiosity, maybe, or the same arrogance that had driven me out there in the first place. At dawn, I went down into the valley. The ground was littered with animal bones, brittle and bleached white. Too many for it to be natural. I followed the trail deeper until I found a crack in the cliffside wide enough for a man to squeeze through. The smell of salt hit me full force, burning my nose. Against my better judgment, I went in. The passage opened into a cavern lit by shafts of sunlight, knifing through cracks above. The walls glittered, crusted thick with salt. And embedded in that salt were bones. Human bones. Skulls stacked like offerings, ribs fanned out like grotesque decorations. I froze, my breath caught in my chest. Then I heard footsteps, bare feet slapping stone. I ducked behind a pillar of salt and peeked out. They emerged from the shadows one by one. Men, women, their skin pale as chalk, stretched thin over wiry frames. Their eyes were sunken, their mouths cracked, but they moved with a strange grace. Each carried a bundle of something wrapped in cloth, dripping dark. They laid the bundles at the base of the wall, unwrapped them, and I saw what they held, limbs fresh, human. They pressed the flesh into the salt, packing it tight, preserving it like jerky. One of them began to hum, low and guttural, and the others joined in. The sound vibrated through the cavern, rattling the bones in the walls. My stomach lurched. I stumbled back, my boots scraping against the floor. The sound echoed too loud. Heads snapped toward me, eyes gleaming in the half-light. I ran. The cavern twisted like a maze, passageways splitting and merging, my panic blinding me to the path I'd taken. Behind me, the chanting grew louder, closer. Not rushed, not frantic. Confident, like they knew I couldn't escape. I burst into a chamber larger than the rest, and what I saw there has haunted me every night since. In the center lay a pit filled with brine, bones floating like driftwood. Around it stood stone altars, stained dark, slick with years of use. And above it all, carved into the salt wall, was a face. Not human, not animal. Something in between, its mouth open in a permanent scream, its eyes hollow sockets that seemed to follow me. The cult, because that's what they were, no doubt, filed into the chamber, circling the pit. They began to sway, voices rising in a chant that clawed at the edges of my sanity. The leader stepped forward, taller than the rest, his body draped in strips of dried flesh. He carried a staff tipped with a human skull encrusted in salt. He pointed it at me. I should have run, but my legs refused. My body locked, my mind screaming while my muscles betrayed me. They advanced, slow, deliberate, closing the circle. The leader dipped his hand into the brine and smeared it across his chest, then raised the skull staff high. The sound that followed wasn't human. A shriek, layered, echoing as if the walls themselves were alive and screaming with him. The air thickened, pressing down on me. Spots swam in my vision. I thought I was going to black out, but at that moment the earth itself shifted. A tremor rattled the cavern, knocking chunks of salt loose from the ceiling. The cult staggered, their chant faltering. I didn't wait. I bolted through the nearest passage, praying it would lead out. The ground shook again, dust choking the air, but I kept running until I saw daylight bleeding through a crack ahead. I clawed my way out, skin tearing against the rock, and collapsed on the forest floor, gasping. The chanting didn't follow me out, but I knew they were still down there waiting. I never told anyone the full truth. I said I got lost, spooked by an animal, injured myself on the rocks. People believed me. Why wouldn't they? The alternative was too insane. But I've never gone back. I moved out of state, tried to start fresh. Still, sometimes at night I wake up choking on the smell of salt. And once, just once, When I drove past a patch of woods hundreds of miles from that valley, I swore I saw a figure at the tree line, pale and barefoot, watching. And when the wind shifted, I heard humming, low, patient, promising they hadn't forgotten me.